Hi, this is a demo of how EFM5 handles the number of synchronous standbys that are required. I'm just going to call it numsync when primary is using synchronous replication and standbys are coming and going. So I have a cluster now set up with primary and 4 standbys. I'm using host names in this example, but it works the same with IP addresses. And here on the primary, which is node 1, we can see that synchronous standby names set to any 3 of the other nodes. So as long as there's 3, it's fine. And we can see that right now there are enough. There are 4 that are in there at the time. The way this used to work was it was dependent on events that happened in the cluster. For instance, if a standby database died, the standby agent on that node would see that it died after the timeout and all that, and tell the rest of the cluster, and then there would be a primary check. The way things happen now is there's just a background check that happens constantly no matter what else is happening. It doesn't even matter if the other standby agents are running. As long as the primary agent is running, it will check on these. So I'm going to show you quickly what's set, the relevant settings in the properties file. You should check the documentation for more of an explanation on these. But reconfigure numsync, this first one. With this set to true, it means EFM will change the number of synchronous standbys needed down if a primary gets stuck. If this is true, then this next property is also used, otherwise it's ignored, that says it can raise the number of synchronous standbys again up to 3 in this case. This last one I have set to false. This is the one that says if a primary is stuck and it can't lower the number of synchronous standbys anymore, or if it's at 1 already, this would take it out of synchronous mode entirely. I've got that set to false for this demo. And then this is a new property that just means every 10 seconds it will ask the primary how many synchronous standbys do you have, what is your required numsync, and then change it if the settings allow it to be changed. The default here is 30 seconds. I've just got this set to a lower value for for the demonstration. So we can see right now on this standby there are 4. Any 3 is fine, not a problem. I'm going to these are the other nodes. This is node 2. Down here's node 3 and 4. I will stop Postgres on these. Just going to mess with the cluster a little bit, but that's okay. So it'll take these standbys a few seconds. I have a lower timeout for this demo, but it'll take them a while to realize that the standbys have left. But EFM no longer waits for that. Every 10 seconds it did this check, and you can see that it has been lowered down to 2 already, even though these may or may not have declared that their standby databases had failed yet. By now they should be idle. Let's just do a cluster status to check that. I'm going to clear and do it again so it's a little easier to read. So now they're idle because the databases are down. If we stop one more over here on this one, I'm going to keep checking this. It's already been lowered in this case. It might not always be lowered this quickly because the wall sender timeout, if I've got the property right, has to, the database itself has to notice that the standbys are gone for it to report who's there when we check the PG stat replication. So now we can add them back again. Start. And we'll just check this and see. Oh, there we go. It's already come back up to 3 again. And so this is a little more robust because it keeps checking in the background. It's not dependent on the other standby agents doing anything. In fact, you can see that they are still idle because these 3 are still idle because they couldn't contact their standby database anymore, and I just haven't resumed them. But we can get that fixed really quickly to show just one more part of this demo. Oops. There we go. So now our cluster status should be back to normal again. So when the primary is doing this check, I'm just going to tail the log a little bit so that you can see what is happening here. It will do these checks. It's doing them every 10 seconds. It does them at the debug log level, so it's not spamming the files. But whenever a cluster status happens, whether a user calls EFM cluster status or a background one happens, because they do happen in the background, then it will log all of this. So if someone is ever thinking, why hasn't it changed? If someone thinks that something should be happening and it's not, you can easily check this by doing a cluster status check on any node. It doesn't matter. And the primary will log all the checks that it does, just to let you know what's going on. So it got any 3 for synchronous standby names. And it also logs the number it's parsed out of that, 3 in this case. It does a check for any potential standbys, selecting any standbys that are not asynchronous. It gets a count for the current number. This potential one is in case numsync can be raised. The current is a check to see if it needs to be lowered. And it says right now that num3 is lower than the number available, but the maximum that is set in the properties file is 3, so that's as high as that's going to go. So that is a way that you can always check, just to make sure. If you think if you're curious about why EFM hasn't raised or lowered it, you can force this check to be logged by doing a cluster status check. One more part about this. So I'm going to do a switch over now to node 2. On node 2, this one right now has synchronous standby name set to 3. Let's check its properties. It has basically the same properties, but in this case, it says that EFM can turn it up to 4. So when this one gets promoted, what we should see is, even though it's set to any 3 right now, once it becomes a primary and it has standbys following it, EFM should see that, oh, there are 4 now. We can raise it up to 4. So we can do a switch over. I know that this is the node that's going to be promoted, because in the standby priority host list over here that I see that node 2 is first. So let's check on our synchronous standbys to see if that has changed already. Oh, it's changed already. Because EFM said it could go, because the properties said EFM could raise it to 4, EFM4 did when the things were available. And you can see in here, looking at the logs, you can see up here, failover has completed. It handles some slot stuff, does whatever. It checks here, numsync 3 is lower than the ones available, so it updates it. Whenever these updates happen, it also creates a notification. And that is kind of the gist of it. You can check one other thing here. It will check even if you don't have the properties set to let EFM change numsync. So with the properties here on this node, we have reconfigure numsync false, so EFM won't change numsync, and reconfigure check sync primary is false, so it won't take it out of sync either. So if we promote this one, sorry, watching me type. EFM put node 3 at the beginning of the list. We'll check our cluster status again, just to show that node 3 is now at the beginning of the list. And now we'll do a switch over. And I'm getting this command back just to copy paste. So on this node, which has now been promoted, we can see that it has 4 standbys available. So it has enough, because synchronous standby names is set to any 3. I'm going to stop 2 of them now. Whoops. Let's clear this just to make it a little easier to read. So there are only two standbys available. So this primary is stuck. EFM won't change it because the properties say not to allow that. And you can see in the logs, actually let's just tail it. Typing while staring at the screen. So you can see the end of it here. The check can't take it out of replication mode because of the properties that were set. And just like we showed before, by performing a cluster status command, that will make it log the relevant information, just so that you can check it sort of anytime you want to check it. This was in the log already, but since we're tailing it, we didn't see what happened before. And you can see that it gets any 3. Numsync is set to 3. There are only 2 there. And then there's this warning: it can't take it out of synchronous replication mode because the properties said not to. And a notification gets sent for this. One little thing about it: it won't send the notification every 10 seconds or whatever, because that would just be spam. So you sometimes might see this in logs. Every notification, or most of the notifications, have a limit of how often they can be sent. But a notification was sent that this is stuck, and it'll be stuck until the databases come back. We can add one back in. I think that would be enough. ND3. So there are 3 now, and if we tail the log, we can see it will figure this out on its own in, I think I've got it set to 30 seconds, but we can just force it one time just for the sake of the demonstration. And you can see that no changes are needed to numsync because it requires 3 and it has 3. So the main point of the change is EFM no longer depends on certain events happening, like a promotion or standbys joining or failing or anything like that. It will just, whoever the primary is, will check in the background every few seconds set by the user and alter numsync for that primary if it's needed and the properties allow it. That is it.